Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome back to my magical HOPATHON wrap up and stats video. I can't believe the Magic HOPATHON has come to an end already. I just want to say a massive, massive, massive thank you to everyone who took part, everyone who showed it love, whether that was following the Twitter account, taking part in 1 park, 2 parks, 3 parks, or doing all 4 parks, tagging me on Instagram, however you participated, whether it was silently or actively through social media, or commented on one of the videos, or watched one of the weekly vlogs. I really, really appreciate all your support on this readathon. It was my first kind of big readathon and big task I undertook regarding YouTube and booktube, and I'm just so grateful for all the love and support regarding it, and it just means the absolute world. I'm so glad it was so well received and everyone had such a fun time. I am going to be doing a mini Instagram template feedback form, just if you guys want to give me any feedback on how to improve for round 2, because there will be a round 2 coming. More information will be coming in 2022 regarding that. Crazy to say that year. I can't believe we're almost in 2022, but there will be a round 2 coming. So I'd love your feedback, any thoughts and feelings you have regarding round 1. How could I improve it? What went well? What did you enjoy about it? What you think I can incorporate into round 2 to make it even better, even more magical for you guys? And yeah, I'm just super excited to get into today's video, because I'll be wrapping up all the stats and all the books I read during the Magical HOPATHON. I gave myself the challenge in October during the Magical HOPATHON to read the most I've ever read in a month regarding 2021 reading. I did a lot of reading last year, obviously due to lockdown and stuff, but in 2021 my kind of average reading has been 5 to 6, maybe 7 at a push books a month. Sometimes I've overstretched that, sometimes I've come short, and so having a challenge to read 13 books in the month of October was really pushing me. It meant I had to read around 200 plus pages a day to kind of read and kind of achieve my goal. It didn't exactly turn out the way I anticipated, but I'm very happy to say I did complete the Magical HOPATHON by completing all 4 parks. So I'm going to share with you everything I've read and all the stats regarding that now. So let's hop into it. No pun intended. I read 12 books in the month of October, which spans across all 13 prompts. So I did go to all 4 parks, and that is 4,045 pages in total, which is a hell of a lot of books. My original TBR I can link up above and down below for you guys if you're still interested in watching it. I'll link it for you guys. But the route I originally wanted to take was to start off in Animal Kingdom and do the park entrance prompt for Animal Kingdom, which was to read a book with nature involved some way, whether that was the plot, the cover design, or the title. And then I wanted to do Flight of Passage, which was to read a 5-star prediction. I then wanted to move on to the snack Jungle Juice to read a middle grade, and then finishing off for the show to do Nemo the musical, to read a book outside your typical genre. I then wanted to hop over to Hollywood Studios, because I was doing this readathon as realistically as possible. They're the 2 closest parks together in the whole of the Walt Disney World Resort. I wanted to hop from Animal Kingdom to Hollywood Studios. In Hollywood Studios I wanted to do the attraction Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway to read a book that was released 2020 or newer. I wanted the snack of Ronto Wrap in the world of Batuu, Star Wars Land, Galaxy's Edge, to read a book outside the typical genre. And then I wanted to do the show Indiana Jones, a book that you keep putting off. You then can walk from Hollywood Studios over to Epcot, so that was my next port of call. So in Epcot I wanted to do the attraction Test Track to read a fast-paced book. I wanted to do obviously the snack of World Showcase, where I read a book from Japan. And then I wanted to do the show of Turtle Talk with Crush to read a middle grade. And then finally you can get the monorail over to Epcot, so that was my next port of call, to go over to Magic Kingdom to finish off the Magical HOPATHON. And I wanted to do the attraction prompt, a Carousel of Progress, to read a book by your favourite author. I then wanted to grab a snack of a Cheshire Cat Tale to read a sweet romance, finishing off the whole experience by watching Happily Ever After, the fireworks show at Magic Kingdom, by reading an anticipated release. That was my action plan before the month started, when I created my TBR, and that is the plan I stuck to, apart from 1 book. So here goes. Here's the rundown. For Animal Kingdom's entrance prompt to read a book involving nature, I did in fact read Starry Eyes by Jen Bennett, which I gave a 3.5 stars. This is a YA contemporary romance book about two friends who used to be enemies who go on a camping trip together to resolve kind of their issues. That's the main plot. I don't want to talk a lot about all these books because they are heavily featured on my channel through the weekly reading vlogs I did regarding the Magic HOPATHON. So if you want any more information about these books, make sure you check out the weekly reading vlogs, which I'll link down below, and they're titled regarding to the park. So all these books I talk about now will be in the Animal Kingdom vlog, for example. I then did in fact ride Flight of Passage to read a 5-star prediction, which I read We're Not Broken by George M. Johnson, which is a non-fiction memoir, and I did indeed in fact give it 5 out of 5 stars. I love George M. Johnson's writing. I thought this was an excellent book alongside All Boys Aren't Blue, which was their last release in 2020, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this read. I then did get Jungle Juice as a snack to read a middle grade, and I read Front Desk by Kelly Yang. Really enjoyed this book, thought it was a brilliant middle grade, and I think it's going to become one of my favourite middle grade series. I have the sequel on my bookshelf right now, which I'm going to read in November, and I cannot wait. I gave this book a 4 stars, thought it was a great middle grade about Mia, who works at a front desk of a motel that her family own, and I thought it was a beautiful middle grade. And then I read The Truants by Katie Weinberg, which I have unhauled because this was the book for Nemo the Musical, to read a book outside your typical genre. It was an iffy book anyway. I hadn't picked it out myself. My boyfriend picked it out as a forfeit, so I didn't really know what it was about when going into it, and I didn't love it. I really skimmed it. I listened to the audiobook and kind of just zoned out. I didn't really enjoy that book at all, and therefore I feel unfair in rating it, so I didn't rate it. However, overall, Animal Kingdom was a very successful park, and I completed all these books in the first week of the readathon. Like I mentioned previously, I then did hop over to Hollywood Studios, where I read This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith for the attraction prompt Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway to read a new release, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 stars. This book basically follows two characters who come together over a really traumatic weekend when one of them pulls the other away from a bridge, so trigger warnings for suicide. But I thought this was a beautifully written story, very emotionally driven, but I think it was a very well spoken about topic. I don't have any experience in the topics kind of addressed. I did feel like it hit home, and I did really enjoy this book and thought it was really well written. And I think this is Lisa Cross Smith's debut novel, which I think is great going for a debut novel, to be fair. So this is the book I read for the attraction prompt in Hollywood Studios. I then read for Ronto Wrap to read a book outside your typical genre. I read The Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer, which really took me by surprise. I really enjoyed this book. I kind of put it on my TBR as like a maybe. I just wanted to fit kind of like a Disney inspired book onto my TBR somehow. So to read a fantasy retelling of Beauty and the Beast seemed to be a perfect way to do this. So I put A Curse So Dark and Lonely on just to see if it would like tickle my fancy when I got around to kind of reading that book. And my god, I read it in a day. I took the day off work, I sat down cozy in my dressing gown, in my blanket, and just binged the entirety of the book in one day, all 450 something pages of it, and I absolutely loved it. It's one of the highest rated books of the readathon, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. And then for Indiana Jones, to read a book that I keep putting off, I read My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and I once again thought this was a really well written story. I had some really good reading in the month of October, and I'm glad I picked all the books I did. This one was a little slower to get through when it was a readathon, maybe not the best kind of choice of book. It was quite difficult to kind of binge read, which is what I kind of needed in the month of October, having the target to read so much. But I did get through it. It took me a little bit longer, and once again I thought this book was so well written, but it does hit obviously some really like heavy trigger warnings, so just be wary of that before going in. But it's about a teacher-student relationship, and the narrator is the one that was in that, the student that was in that relationship, and you flash back and forward to present day and past, and they kind of realise when accusations come out current day that what they did have back in the day with that teacher was sexual assault and sexual abuse rather than kind of what they thought was love. And it was a very difficult story to read. I'm glad I did manage to get it onto my TBR, and I did read it this month because I have been putting it off since like 2020 when it was released because it sounded interesting from the get-go. Glad I managed to read it. I can't rate it because it is one of those really tricky to rate books, but I do highly recommend it if you're like kind of interested in reading it but you're not really too sure. If you can cope with the trigger warnings, I think it's a worthwhile book to read, but just be wary. It is very dense, it is slow to read because you have to keep taking breaks because the topics and the subjects are really heavy to read. And that was Hollywood Studios over. Once again, a really good rated park regarding books. I had a 4 star, a 4.5, and then a non-rated book, but still a good experience reading book-wise. And then we were hopping over to Epcot. In Epcot, I read for the attraction prompt test track to read a fast-paced book. I picked up The Flight by Julie Clark. This book really disappointed me, unfortunately. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. It was kind of nearing a 2.5 for the majority of the read, and then kind of the end kind of picked up when all the kind of reveals and accusations started to come out. This book basically follows 2 main characters who swap positions at an airport because they both want to run away from their own lives. So they swap tickets and they get on each other's planes. Unfortunately, one of those planes goes down and the one left behind has to deal with both secrets and kind of come to terms with what the hell's going on. It didn't really feel like a thriller, more like a dark contemporary. I was never like scared, and Holly Jackson's YA murder mysteries get me more freaked out than this one did. So I definitely think this is more like a dark contemporary. It wasn't for me personally, but I do think that a lot of people would enjoy this book if it's something that you're interested in, possibly. I just think that the plot and the tagline really grabbed me. I thought it was going to be something I really would enjoy, and it just felt massively flat through the execution of the story, unfortunately. So that was that one. I then, for the show Turtle Talk with Crush, I read When Life Gives You Mangoes by Corinne Getton. I enjoyed this book. It is kind of a little bit like magical realism regarding the plot. It basically follows our main character who can't remember what happened last summer, so everyone kind of teases her about it, and this is kind of like the main intrigue in the mystery, which did keep me really intrigued, which kept me turning the pages, which is why I read this book so quickly. Less than 24 hours spent reading this book. Lovely way to kind of get this book read during the readathon because I could binge it so easily, and the intrigue was up there. I kept turning the pages kind of see what was happening and why this character couldn't remember what happened last summer. But unfortunately for me, it's just not my type of book. It did kind of have fantasy, magical realism elements, and that's not my type of story. So unfortunately, it didn't hit the spot for me. But I do think it's a very cute middle grade if you are interested in it. So I gave it a 3 stars. And then finally for Epcot, I went over to the World Showcase in Japan to grab a snack. So that was to read a book, whether that was set in one of the countries, written by an author from that country, or translated from their native language. So I picked Japan. This book fitted all those kind of 3 mini elements, I guess, of the prompt. The author is Japanese, it is set in Japan, and it is also translated from Japanese. So kind of ticked all 3 boxes regarding that prompt. And I really randomly enjoyed this book, but I can't put my finger on it because it was such a random book. It kind of basically follows a camera lens who zooms in to different aspects of a night in a Japanese city, and you kind of follow the main character who's sat at a cafe and is just reading a book. Her sister is in a coma. You do obviously follow the sister as well while she's in this coma, and weird happenings start to happen while she's in a coma. I don't want to say much more than that. It is a very interesting story, a very unique story that I haven't really read anything about before. So I did enjoy it, and it does make me intrigued to read more of their work. I'm just very confused on why I enjoyed this book because I don't think I fully understand what exactly happened. And that was Epcot done. So not the best park regarding ratings, but still enjoyable. I'm just glad that the page count on this park was low so I could fly through it pretty quickly. And then we are finally on to Magic Kingdom, one of my favorite parks. And this was the last week of the readathon. I was really feeling the pressure this week. My original plan was to read Walking on Sunshine by Giovanna Fletcher for Carousel of Progress, to read a book by a favourite author, to read Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert for the Snack Cheshire Cattail, to read a book with a sweet romance, and read Last Night by Mahari McFarlane for the show Happily Ever After, to read an anticipated release. I, for the first time, had to merge 2 prompts. So one of the rules in the Magic HOPATHON was that you could merge the snack and show prompts, so you could eat a snack and watch a show at the same time. So you could read one book for those 2 prompts. I hadn't done that through this entire readathon. I really wanted to try and aim for 13 books this month to say that I'd like fully completed my readathon. I'd like done everything that I could to complete it. But this last week got really hectic for me, going back into the office and sorting things out regarding going back to the office for the first time in 18 months. So it got a little bit chaotic, so I did have to merge the snack and the show prompt together. So in Magic Kingdom, I officially read Carousel of Progress, to read a book by a favourite author. I did read Walking on Sunshine by Giovanna Fletcher, which was an e-arc on my phone, and I loved it. I cannot wait for it to officially come out this month on the 11th so I can reread it physically, because I gave it a 4.5 stars. Well, I don't think I told you I gave this one a 3.5 stars. If I didn't say, I don't think I did say. But Walking on Sunshine got a 4.5 stars. I think that little 0.5 of a star is the fact I read it by an e-arc copy, and when I have the physical hardback and I can tab it up and really immerse myself in the story, I really feel like I can give it a full 5 stars. I cannot wait for that book to be in my hands so I can give it a second chance, because I think it was a brilliant book. It basically follows 3 friends who were in a close-knit group of 4, and that 4th member of like the friendship group has died of breast cancer, and they leave kind of clues and rules to how to help heal her other friends once she's gone, and those rules kind of lead the other 3 friends, Mike, Zaza and Vicky, on a trek to Peru, and it's about self-discovery and self-love and finding yourself after lots of life events have happened and kind of figuring out where your life is leading you now, so they're not kind of submersed in grief. And I really enjoyed it. I just hope that it can be a 5 stars when I reread it. Although it kind of didn't fit the prompt of sweet romance, I did merge the snack and the show prompt to read last night for the Cheshire Cat Tale to read a sweet romance, and for Happily Ever After to read an anticipated release. So I merged those 2 together to read last night, and I didn't love it. I was so disappointed by this book. It got a very average 3 stars. I didn't really care for any of the characters. I didn't feel any connection. Basically follows 4 friends, and one night something drastic happens and it really switches and turns their friendship on its head, and everything starts to change, and you kind of have to discover what went wrong and kind of how they heal themselves afterwards. Not very similar to Walking on Sunshine in regards of execution, but maybe in kind of broad plot line. This one just fell so short for me, maybe because I did read a similar book only a few days before with Walking on Sunshine. So yeah, not the best book. I gave it a 3 stars. And that, my friends, wraps up the Magical Hopathon. Not all these books are here because I've already unhauled some, or I read them as e-copies. But yeah, I am very proud of myself to say that I completed my Magical Hopathon, like how successfully that I actually did. I am just in shock that I managed to read 12 books in the month of October. So proud of myself, and most of the books I really enjoyed. So the best book I read this month probably has to be a joint decision between We're Not Broken by George M. Johnson and A Curse of Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. Who Am I? A fantasy in the top books. Also an honourable mention to Walking on Sunshine, because I can't not shout out my queen of contemporary, Giovanna Fletcher. The most disappointing book probably has to be Last Night, just because I actually thought this was going to be a 5-star book and it just didn't hit the spot for me, and I'm so sad. I don't know whether it was because it was the last book of the readathon and I was just pushing myself through it. I was feeling burnt out at the end, so whatever book that I was going to be reading last wouldn't hit the spot for me because I just can't bother to read anymore. I don't know, but this book unfortunately didn't hit the spot for me and has left me feeling very disappointed. And the book that surprised me most probably has to be A Curse So Dark and Lonely, just because it was a fantasy and I just wasn't expecting anything from it. I didn't even think I was going to actually read it this month, so to actually read it during one day was just an incredible experience, and I absolutely loved my day reading. I'll leave the vlog where I did that up above in the cards and down below for you guys. But I think that pretty much wraps up my Magical Hopathon stats and wrap up video. The final Magical Hopathon video that will be coming on my channel for 2021. Oh my god, I can't believe it's officially over. Once again, a massive thank you to everyone who took part. I love you all to pieces, and make sure you stay tuned, subscribe and follow Twitter so you are one of the first people to know when the round 2 announcement video comes out. So without further ado, make sure you give this video a massive thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below to see future content from me. Leave some pixie dust in the comments below what you read, what your favourite book of the Magical Hopathon was, what your least favourite book of the Magical Hopathon was, what was your most surprising. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to know. And without further ado, I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.